Okay, this is episode 62 of Toe to Toe Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Toe to Toe. What's up, Jen Mertlin?
Monica, how are you?
Good to see you again.
You too.
Hey, we have a guest on the Toe to Toe Podcast today. Jen, introduce us.
Look at him. And if you're on our YouTube, you can see him. Brrr, hey, TJ.
Hi, Jen. Hi, Monica. So happy to be here.
Oh, we're so happy you're here.
So TJ's been a tiebreaker a couple of times, right?
Yeah.
2 or 3? 2 times?
Two. Yeah,
two times, yeah. He's TJ Gossman with KW, serving Cincinnati. And do you do Dayton?
Try not to, but I will if it's good enough deal.
He's my type of guy right there.
That's awesome.
The most important thing we all need to know right now is during the tiebreakers, does TJ side with me or?
He's 1-for-1. This is the
1-1.
tiebreaker.
Oh, this ought to be interesting. TJ, come on.
I feel like I already know what he's going to say, but that's fine.
All right.
That's fine. That means she thinks it's Team Weekly. You know that, right? When she says that's fine.
All right. Today, Jen and I and TJ are going to be duking it out over this question. Should the buyers pay their own agent's commission? So in other words, should the buyers pay the buyer's agent commission and the sellers pay the listing agent commission?
TJ, you want to go first?
I mean, I will. It's pretty straightforward in my opinion. And the short answer is no.
Tell us more.
No. And you know, it's one of those things that sounds really good. It sounds fair. Like, hey, sellers pay theirs, buyer pays theirs. Here's my issue with it. We're changing the rules in the middle of the game.
What do you mean?
Okay, and that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked it, Jen. What I mean is that when the sellers bought their home, the sellers paid the commission. And we're in the midst of the market. So to make the change now is really difficult for a couple of reasons. Number one, appraisal, right? All appraisals have that factored into it if we really get honest about it. So now it's going to adjust appraisals by 3% in the middle of the game, just like I had said before. When the buyers bought, they didn't have to pay commission, and then they get to sell and they get to benefit from it. Not fair.
Yeah, but is that really a good reason not to pay the commission? It's because we've always done business this way, thus we should continue doing business this way.
So,
TJ, keep in mind, Jen wants to blow the whole damn industry up and start over.
Knows.
Just keep this in mind.
This is true. This is true. Yeah, I just think it's problematic. So it sounds like a really simple idea, and I just don't think it is. I think it's actually a mess. And the biggest thing, if we're going to come from a really like emotional person point of view, Jen Mertlin, is affordability for the buyers. First-time home buyers have a hard enough time right now in this difficult market, and now we're going to have to add 3% to their cost. It's like, let's keep it simple. Why change things, Jen? It's so nice how it works today.
But if we were, let's just say for a moment, Monica and TJ, that we were going to blow this shit up, would we start it out like that?
The answer for me is no. I'm on TJ's side of course, on this, although I have a little different reason.
All right, let's hear it.
I think we would be in for a massive problem of unrepresented buyers if we left it up to them. And this, you and I, we all know that is not a good idea for this industry, for listing agents across.
Well, that's how it used to be, right? Didn't it all start out like in the beginning? It was all like seller representation.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I mean, we can't afford to have buyers unrepresented. It's dangerous. It's not in their best.
I don't really think that would happen though, because they pay their own attorneys, and the attorney is.
I think you're crazy. For TJ's point is that buyers are in most cases coming to the table with as much as they have. And if they need an extra 3% to be protected, they will forego protection. And that's not good for our industry as a whole.
Well, what if they do it like what they do with closing costs and up the price?
What do you mean?
I think what she's saying is that they just write it in, which is what they do right now, Jen. That's what they do. That's why sellers pay closing costs. So you're just wanting to add to the system that already exists. It's not broken.
Shaking the numbers around. That's like the same thing then.
I know. I just think there's something to be said for like, I hear what you guys are saying, And I just think that if you are getting representation, that you should pay for that.
Jen, how would you show up differently in the business if you were a buyer's agent and you knew that the buyers had to pay for you?
I wouldn't show up differently. I'm talking about from like the fairness of the sellers.
But selling your house is what costs money, and part of that cost
So
is
does buying a house.
well, but there's a factor where you don't, I don't think it's, well, I don't know about that angle. I mean, that's probably a road that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Do you think it would be different, TJ, if we did go to that? Do you think that agents would represent buyers and sellers differently?
Here's what I think. I think that in a perfect world, in a utopia, buyers understand the value of an agent. I think when it comes down to money, buyers think a little bit differently. And I think that if buyers think from a very rudimentary point of view that, hey, I can't afford it, I can save it, I can afford more if I don't, usually they don't see our value until we do the job. And then they think, oh my God, I couldn't have done this without you.
Right.
The problem is we don't have value until we deliver it. So if we don't get in front of them, we have no value.
Yeah,
And
but
that's the
I
fear.
agree with you, but why does that have to be that the seller pays?
So let's look at it this way, Jen. So as a listing agent, right? So we agree that sellers are buyers are sellers ultimately, right? They're the same people.
Generally, yeah.
It's just a different role. So even though you're paying when you sell, you didn't pay when you bought. All it's doing is just moving the money around. It's not really saving anybody any money. I think that's the myth. So like they're paying for it. They're just paying for it at the end as opposed to at the beginning. The buyers ultimately are going to pay. They're just going to pay when they sell.
So you guys are saying it would fundamentally change the way, not only like the way that the buyers were represented, but more importantly, you think that they would choose to be unrepresented if they had to pay?
I think there'd be a significant change in that. Yes.
What if we got rid of, like, they were no longer allowed to ask the sellers for closing costs?
Jen, you don't like buyers.
She's so hateful.
I like them when they buy, but I also think they should be able to afford a house. I don't think they should buy if they can't afford it.
Yeah, by Jen Mertlin's rules.
Define,
like they can afford it. You just don't like the rules.
Right. And define affordability. Just because they need an extra $1,000 or $2,000 at closing to get the job done doesn't mean that they can't afford the house. They're paying the monthly mortgage. They're keeping the upkeep.
Right.
Define it. You know?
Well, I wonder too, if they were, if they ended up where they had, the buyers had to pay, and you're saying the buyers would then go unrepresented, it really would then have the listing agent be doing all the crap.
It would be a nightmare. And you as a listing agent, you would not like this. And
I would hate that.
You now know. Hey, here's the other thing I'm thinking about. Technically, the 6%, and at least in our market, 6% is average. I know in other markets it's different, but 6% is not technically a buyer's agent commission. It's the cost of selling the house. Because if the buyer is unrepresented, you still keep the 6%. Now,
not in all cases, but depends on what you negotiate.
But technically, that is what the deal is.
But then you have to be a dual agent. You don't keep it if the buyer's unrepresented.
You can. Yeah, absolutely. That's how the contract's written.
Is it?
Yeah. The 6% is listing cost. You can, and there are a couple of check boxes you have to check. You can, if unrepresented and or if dual agency, that money still goes for the purpose of listing the property. Now, most agents choose to reduce that.
I mean, I keep it, but
right,
because you're doing double the work.
That's correct. That's how we explain it that way.
I don't know. I guess I think I disagree with you guys on, do I think that they would then go unrepresented? I see what you're saying, and maybe, but I don't think it would be as big as, I mean, you already have sellers going unrepresented, and there's not that many. Do you know what I mean? Because it would follow the same lines. So like, if that were true, then we would have tons more for sale by owners too. And we don't.
because sellers in general understand the sort of enormity of the risk.
So you're just saying then first time home buyers.
Have you guys had, TJ, have you had a buyer say, now, how do you get paid? Have you had buyers ask you that?
Yeah. So especially depending on the marketing that we do. So if we say something like no cost to you, right? Which we'll do sometimes to market to buyers, like, you can use our services typically at no cost to you. So at that time, a lot of times we'll say like, how's it work? And then I just explain sellers pay commissions. And when you sell, you'll pay commissions. I say that, so I kind of try to explain that road to them. But they love it, and buyers don't always know. I think there's always going to be a subset that wouldn't care. And obviously they see our value. I just don't see the benefit of rocking the apple cart. And I don't think it's broken. So like to fix it just because.
I mean, TJ, the whole system is broken.
Here we
Well,
go.
see, I don't come from that mentality. I come from the system has some cracks, and like that's why professional agents
Like a foundational
are there to
crack?
do the Band-Aids.
Yeah.
Yeah, no water coming
Like a crack in the whole side of the house?
vertical. They stay
Yeah,
vertical.
Yeah.
not a horizontal crack. Okay, gotcha.
I watch a lot of Bravo reality TV, so this is coming from a place of pure
Lord.
substance. And I heard that in England they do not have buyer's agents at all. What do you think of that? That might
you
be an
just use-
absolute lie, but I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that's how it used to be though. Like it was, everybody was an agent of the seller.
Okay, so that's what the equivalent of that is. You're charged with a crime and you go to court and you don't hire a defense attorney. You just say, I'll just use the prosecutor. They're an attorney. I'll just use that person.
Right.
Like it's insanity.
It is. That's why you should have your own representation that
That's
you
right.
pay for.
Well, I think we can all agree on the first part of that sentence. I just don't know about the second part. And ultimately you are paying for it. P.S. It's packaged in the price of the house.
Correct.
It just is.
I mean, yeah, the appraisal, and that's the other piece that we didn't really touch on. Like, if you make this change, it is going to affect appraisals. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's going to have to change the whole system. It's not a minor change. It's actually an extremely major change for a non-major issue. And that's
And you're saying because it's in the price of the house now, that when that changes, the values will go down?
Of course.
I think
of course,
if you had an appraiser would disagree with you. They're saying, oh no, we're giving the market price of the house. We're not including commission in there.
But I think are you saying, TJ, because then the sellers would sell for less?
So what I'm saying is that we've got appraisals today, and I'm not sure what appraisers would say, but let's get honest. Like appraisers build in the commission when they appraise homes. Like that's market value. That's why homes sell where they do. I don't believe that if a buyer was responsible for half of the commission, that homes would appraise at the exact same amount. It doesn't make sense.
But is that because they're not putting the offer there because their costs are higher?
I don't know if I understand the question.
Are you saying that they wouldn't, I think what you're saying is the buyers would not offer what they would offer today because they have an extra cost?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's going to have to be offset somewhere. It can't just go nowhere, right? The sellers can't have their cake and eat it too.
Right.
So something would have to give. It's just like, it's one of those dominoes that like, you hit and you think that was cool. And then you're like, oh my God, this is 1.5 mile long domino track that ends calling 911. Like it's one of those things. There's a name for that. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I would buy into that, but I think that there would be a way around that, right? Because you still have to have buyers buying houses. And so maybe then like if right now you're only allowed a certain percentage to be paid by the seller, you're only allowed, like what we did for that was then we just increased the price of the house. And then, so it's really the buyer paying for it. So like this would then be like that. But this is kind of the same mentality of like that stupid earnest money. So like they are writing the check, the buyers are writing the check for earnest money, and it means nothing. But like in their head, it means something.
What if that is the purpose of the earnest money? To have at least like a connection.
I don't think that's why they started having I don't think that was the initial intention.
But if that is what's
sure.
going on, I say it's worth it. It is a conversation about guys, are you serious? This is a whole nother podcast, by the way.
Well, we did this one already.
We
I
did,
forget
you're
which one
right.
it is. But then, okay, so take that mentality and put it on having buyer representation. So how many of us have, even if we've gotten a buyer signed agreement, first of all, more people would get it, which they should be doing anyway.
Mhm.
Second of all, if you had a buyer, buyers wouldn't just like up and vanish or walk or go buy a new build without you or go buy their friend's house without you. Like, wouldn't it all even out?
I'm picturing a $500,000 buyer paying $15,000 in addition to the house. It's just. not
But
gonna
to
happen.
TJ's point, they're paying it anyway.
But they don't, it's not, to your point, there's a whole mental gymnastics that's going on around that. And
Yeah.
the minute it becomes like a cost of sale, it's going to get line itemed out. That it's not, I mean, could you,
But making it free doesn't keep the line item in.
could you roll it into the mortgage?
That's what I'm saying. That's what they would probably end up doing, just like they did with closing costs. When closing costs became too expensive, they just started being like, okay, well, now you're allowed to up the price of the house and you can have up to 3 or 5% or whatever it is. The seller paid, but really it's the buyer paying.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if we're going to come to an agreement on this one. Ben,
I think maybe we should all go back to our corners. What do you guys think?
please.
I'm with you, huh?
All right. Step
TJ and I
back.
we need a break.
We
Break.
do.
Yep. Let's hear a word from our sponsor. When we return, we're going to have the final punches. Dun, dun, dun.
Welcome back. Now, we've all taken a moment and gathered our thoughts and, I don't know, taken care of any cuts and bruises that we had, gotten a little drink of water.
Yeah.
TJ, you want to give us your final thoughts on this, or give us a your zinger thought on why this is a bad idea?
Team Mertland. I mean Team Weekly.
There you
apologize.
go.
2 to
I was
1,
like, hold on.
sorry.
What?
Oh, I
Came
almost cheated
over.
on you, Monica. I apologize. No,
did, TJ, I'm
I'm
hurt.
Team Monica big time on this one. I think that ultimately it's fine. And it comes down to it's taking money from one pocket and putting it in another. It's just framing it a different way. The system in this particular aspect is not broken enough to need a major overhaul. It works. Keep it simple. It'll be fine. Why add another
Fine.
variable?
You know what FINE stands for, TJ?
This is going to start with the F word.
It is. Effed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. This is not a great way to make decisions.
Why
It's
are
fine.
Are you describing yourself like that about this, Merlin? What's going on?
Some days, yes.
Yes.
Not today. All right, I'm going to respectfully disagree with Team Weekly and Team Gossman here. I think that it's your purchase and you should pay for representation. And I think it's the same. Like, I don't think it's going to mess it up that bad.
And I think there's one reason why we don't do this. Whether it all shakes out in the end, I don't care if it's, all comes out on the closing document, it's all the same. In my mind, it from the beginning sets a dangerous possibility of buyers choosing not to be represented to save a couple bucks. And
They
I
can
don't
choose
think
that
that's
now.
worth it. They can, but because it's free, they don't. Free in quotes, air quotes, if you're watching. They just don't. I just think that's the precedent that would set.
I just think that's not enough to not make a decision. I guess.
All right.
You guys won.
I think that's going to have to be, well, let's see what people think. I think it's going to have to be the end of this battle right here, but let's take it to the
You
street.
know they agree with you guys.
Well, because they're right. They like to be right. Do you agree? Do you think there was a knockout? Go to the Toe to Toe Podcast Facebook page and let us know what you think.
Oh, yes. And make sure you like and subscribe and give us a 5-star review with a comment. It helps us get seen. If you have any battle ideas, certainly send us a message. Or if you want to learn about EXP, send me a text at 513-400-1691. And TJ, it's always a pleasure, even though you broke your own tiebreaker in your Team Weekly. That's okay.
He knew what he
I
had
love
to
you
do.
both. I love you both so much. You have no idea. Big fan.
Thanks for
TJ, you were
coming
great.
on.
Come back again sometime. And if you have a referral for Cincinnati, be sure to reach out to TJ Gossman, Gausman.
Yes. Get it. Bye.
All right, Jen, I'll see you
Bye,
next
guys.
time.
Bye, Monica.